The Macintosh 512K, released September 10th, 1984, discontinued April 14th, 1986, powered by the Motorola 68000 chip running at 8 MHz with 512 kilobytes of RAM soldered to the motherboard. Okay, I wanted to do an 80s style opening. Now can we go back to digital video? Thank God. In this video, I'll examine a thrift shop 512K Mac, talk about what came with the 512, review some apps and games that the 512 ran, and the upgrades that could be done. The Macintosh 512K was an original Macintosh with 4 times the RAM. Otherwise, they were the same machine. Because of the increased memory, it was known by the nickname Fat Mac. No, exciting music isn't going to make the content of the video any more exciting. Anyway, it's now been 32 years since it was introduced. Think about it. The original Mac OS was around for 16 years before OS X came along. OS X has now been around for almost 16 years. I still think of OS X as new. But really, the first Mac in 1984 was not that long ago. If you figure the first Macintosh was released 3 years after the hit television show BJ and the Bear was cancelled.
I'm BJ McKay and this is my best friend Bear.
Bad example. We're done with that. The original Macintosh cost $2,495 US. The 512K was released at a price of $3,195, simultaneously dropping the original to $2,195. A 512K memory upgrade for the original Macintosh was predictably $995. Today, all this computer is good for is as a collectible. As far as current value, it depends on what condition it's in and if it's complete. Definitely not that much, maybe 10% of that. Now they're just getting stupid, plus that's not even a 512K. So I picked up a 512K Macintosh from Goodwill. They said it was non-functional. Now they understood that you can only boot with a floppy disk. It wasn't that. There's actually a technical issue. Here it is. Now, opening second-hand equipment does not count as an unboxing video. Get out of here. There is no software included at all, which is admittedly smart for privacy reasons. But then again, they left personal paperwork in here. From this, we know the computer originally belonged to Joseph Samuels. This 1984 Microsoft pamphlet is interesting. Their spreadsheet application Multiplan was one of the 3 premier apps for the 1984 Macintosh introduction, MacWrite and MacPaint being the other 2. So it was the first one available that was not from Apple. Then again, Multiplan was available on almost every platform, even available on the 8-bit Commodore 64. Here's Multiplan on the Mac. This style of row column addressing since went by the wayside. Looks pretty confusing. In 1986, Microsoft halted further development of Multiplan on all platforms. Microsoft could not compete with Lotus 123 spreadsheet, but also realized 8-bit machines and DOS were not the future. So they focused on their new graphical user interface spreadsheet exclusively for the Macintosh. It was called Excel and was released September 1985. We all know how that turned out. And what else? Microsoft Word. Microsoft ported Word from MS-DOS to the Mac. After months of delays, it finally shipped in early 1985. Word's getting around. Fast. Puns. Joseph must have bought the first copy. It says he bought it in February 1985. Then he wrote a letter to Microsoft 2 weeks later with suggested improvements to Word. They actually wrote back personally thanking him for his suggestions. Then in the July 1985 issue of Macworld, he has a letter printed on the matter. With Macworld issues now available free online from the first issue all the way up to the end of the century, you can read it yourself on page 154. True to their word, Macworld paid him $25 for his submission. Now check out this Word manual. This guy was digging Microsoft Word. Okay, let's see what else we have here. The original Macintosh manual. Looks like you got some good use out of it too. But I don't have this, so this is very cool to get. That's a pretty Spartan special menu. By the way, the padded case was a popular alternative to Apple's canvas bag for carrying the Macintosh around. This was before laptop computers, so a draw of the Macintosh was that it was a portable, rather transportable computer. Dude! There were many companies selling accessories for the new Macintosh. One of the most important accessories was the Image Writer printer. This was the one and only printer that would work with the Macintosh from the beginning. A good deal at $550. We have the original power cord. You can tell by the right angle plug-in and the Apple logo on the plug. The original mouse, pivotal to the Macintosh's success. Keyboard is the original model with no numeric keypad section, though you could buy a numeric keypad separately. And the original 400K external floppy drive. These are a bit more rare. Has some safety instruction taped to the top. If we look at this new in-box picture, we see that this card was included with the drive. Then we have the Macintosh CPU itself. Good condition. A bit of a melted corner at the back. No idea why. Maybe from the injection molding process itself when the case was made. The feet have gone gummy. Not sure why they go this way. Just the rubber naturally breaking down probably. The serial number under the nose of the Mac will tell you when the manufacture date was. So the first digit tells you the year, 1984. The next two digits tell you the week number of that year. Okay, so this computer is way older than a 512K. January 1984, fourth week, is when the original 128K Macintosh was released. Here's Steve Jobs unveiling it that same week. And the model number is M0001, not M0001W, which was the model number of the 512. Yet the back case says Macintosh 512. Well, Apple's official 512K upgrade involved an Apple dealer swapping out the entire motherboard. They also exchanged the plaque on the back because you can see if we look at it from the inside, it does push out separate from the case. And they put a new model sticker on the rear. Meaning this was a legitimate Apple upgrade. Let's verify with the keyboard. What's the serial here? Third week of 84. Here it is next to a 1985 keyboard. Note they cut down on the vent holes for some reason. And the mouse, second week of 84. The CPU would be much more valuable if he hadn't upgraded, but 128K was so limited that I don't blame anyone at the time for doing that. Even though the original 128K Macintosh was widely considered to not have enough RAM, it should be pointed out that at the time, 128K was considered a lot of memory. You had the IBM PC, Commodore 64, and Apple IIe, all at 64K. And Radio Shack Coco with 16K. The Macintosh was planned to have 64K as well, but Apple engineers and developers like Microsoft lobbied hard for 128K. The Macintosh had the overhead of running a software operating system, and a graphical one at that, so it really did need this extra boost to 512. So much so that Apple accelerated their timeline to release the 512K Mac. It was originally planned for a 1985 release. Sadly, Mr. Joseph Samuels passed away in April 2015, which explains why his Macintosh was at Goodwill. He was a professor of law, professional arbitrator, and donated his time to numerous worldwide humanitarian efforts. A musician, photographer, not to mention one of the first Macintosh users. Rest in peace, Joseph. So, now we know why all this is here. Why won't it start up? Let's look inside. It may or may not have the reset switch installed. Joe's Mac did not. If it did, it would need to come off before opening it. The battery compartment is the first thing to check. Batteries being left to leak inside the compartment are a common issue, And the best case scenario is that there is no leakage inside the compartment. Well, actually, the best case scenario is the computer is full of money, even if it's Canadian Tire money. Unfortunately, neither of those things happened. We open it up, no battery, but I do see corrosion there. So a battery did leak in there pretty badly at one time. Luckily, the battery is not right on the motherboard like later compact Macs, so it probably didn't destroy the motherboard, unlike this Macintosh Classic board, for example. I open it up to confirm a fairly bad battery leak. So once we extract the board, yep, 512K, and 512K is checked off on the dual purpose board. Oh, and there's a fragment of the battery terminal. Nice. The famous molded signatures inside the case are almost unreadable because of the type of metallic spray coating applied to the plastic case interior to meet FCC regulations. Oh, brutal. So let's see what's wrong here. It won't turn on at all, which means the analog board. I've tested the switch and the fuse. Has to be something more major on the analog board, possibly unrelated to the battery leak. It is not unusual at all for the analog board to fail on early Macs, up to including the Mac Plus. Building the power supply on the board without a cooling fan doomed many to failure. The easiest thing to do is find a replacement analog board. I could swap in a board from a Mac Plus, for example. Oh, I should check in with work. I left my assistant in charge so I could work on this video. And then there's a message.
You told me to let you know if there's other problems. Yes, there's problems. There is a spider the size of your entire office in the female washroom.
Okay, so I'm not going to have time to troubleshoot this any further. So I'll continue this video with an actual stock 512K Mac. The 512K came in the same box as the original Macintosh did, with the Matisse-inspired line drawing on it, and included a plastic accessories box. Normally the manuals and reset switch would be in here as well. Now the original Macintosh had a separate box for the MacWrite and MacPaint stuff, but with the 512 they crammed everything together in the main plastic box. These were new updated versions of the apps that were released along with the new 512K, MacWrite 2.2 and MacPaint 1.4. So you get a system disk, MacWrite, MacPaint, 2 guided tours, and a backup disk. What's with the cheap adhesive they used on some of these labels? It looks like they were stored in a bag of potato chips. If you're an original Macintosh buyer with earlier versions of MacWrite and MacPaint, you could take the disk to the dealer to overwrite with the new versions. All Macs up until the release of the Macintosh Plus included MacWrite and MacPaint for free. Anti-competition complaints from developers and Apple's lack of focus on developing the apps prompted Apple to spin them off to a separate company named Claris, and they became paid software. The guided tour on cassette tape instructed people how to use the graphical user interface.
This is the guided tour of Macintosh. Please find the disc with the title, A Guided Tour of Macintosh, and insert it into the disk drive below the screen. Put it in with the metal end first and the label up. Push it all the way in.
These original 400K drives were loud.
This is the guided tour screen. Are you ready for the next guided tour?
Yes.
On the guided tour screen, please position the pointer to point to, why do I have windows?
Hey, that's what I ask myself each day at work.
Had to give you a joke, Drone.
Oh yeah. Of course they were talking about windowing in the OS. This was before Microsoft Windows even existed. But yeah, back then, a mouse was a completely new concept to almost everyone.
Hello, computer.
It was a completely different way of thinking. First time I showed it to my friend, he's moving it around in midair, trying to move the pointer. And we were in university at the time. The associated guided tour discs required a reboot to use. That's because the guided tour app was not compatible with the standard Finder. On May 2nd, 1984, they did the first update to the OS, version 1.1, which was the system that shipped with the 512. It had the famous mountain scene splash screen for the Finder. The shutdown command did not exist yet. Instead, you'd simply eject your disk, then switch it off. It didn't take long for games to appear. Games that were easily within the capability of the original Macintosh was interactive fiction, text adventures. I used to play Infocom adventures on my local library's Apple IIe. In the spring 1984 issue of Infocom's newsletter, the New York Times, they announced the Macintosh versions would be available by July. They say, judging from the number of requests for information on our software availability for the Mac, this is going to be a hot-selling system. Yeah, I'd say. Within a few years, Macintosh was their top-selling platform. However, the user interface did not gain much from being on the Macintosh, since their games were text-only. By the way, the New York Times told Infocom to stop calling their newsletter New York Times for fear people would get it confused with their newspaper. No, that was not a joke. Future more expansive text adventures like Infocom's A Mind Forever Voyaging required a 512K Mac. This game had a pretty wild sci-fi premise, taking place in the year 2031 and future hopping from there. Infocom was known for their amazing packaging, which provided background to the game. Wait a minute. Queen Di at 70. Oops. Infocom used the Mini Finder for this game. Mini Finder allowed you to move more quickly among applications and documents. For example, my saved games would appear here as well. It's a similar concept to the modern-day dock in OS X. Mini Finder was a hot new addition to System 2. The new OS also featured a shutdown command. Infocom was swallowed up by Activision, who disbanded it in 1989. But even to the end, their games never required more than a Macintosh 512K. Other entertainment titles, like the ubiquitous Tetris Macintosh game, required 512K. No, never mind showing it, we've all seen it. The Mac Venture series, which included Shadowgate, required 512K. It was a game completely mouse-based, done years before the 90s hit game Myst. Okay, so I'm in a tomb with 6 sarcophagi. I click open, then click on the sarcophagus I want to... Okay, enough of that game. This is the same scene from the 2014 remake of Shadowgate on Steam. There was so much nostalgia for the original game that this remake was crowd-funded. You can even buy the original Apple IIgs and Macintosh versions for a few dollars and play them through Steam. Dark Castle, a challenging arcade game that many will remember, it required 512K. It featured impressive black and white graphics, really showing off the high resolution of the Macintosh. My sister and I would try and beat it by having her work the keyboard to move the guy around, and I'd work the mouse to shoot.
Start hitting mutants. Mutants. Jay, you're not hitting nothing. You sit there and you complain and then you get killed, see? God. Okay. Jay, you always take your time and it really gets me.
We were doomed from the start.
Jay, you sitting there eating really bothers me.
Obviously, we did not succeed.
Whoa! Oh! We should have ducked.
It was later ported to other platforms without regard to changing the complex controls or difficulty.
This is beyond any doubt the worst Sega Genesis game I have ever played.
Concertware Plus. This music composition package was written by some college students who got a Mac in '84 and started a company. Here's Beethoven's Fifth, one of the many pieces of music included. It allowed you to design your own instrument. I'm making one. I designed the waveform too. Let's see how it sounds leading Beethoven's Fifth. I didn't think you could improve on Beethoven, but there you go.
Damn!
The Bard's Tale needed 512K as well, but you needed to have upgraded to an 800K drive. .3D, but moving around could be confusing because of the repetition in the graphics. Okay, here's the equipment shop. Some clowns messed with the text in this copy of the game. Ugh. Here's one of the many inns that you can enter to get a drink and information. Geez, these guys. Then there were Dungeons and Dragons type battles. That's not the actual name of this enemy. Okay, forget this. A lot of these apps and games are available on the software archival site, Macintosh Garden. But if you want to bring a game from this site to an 80s Mac, you'll need bridge hardware. First, determine what kind of disk drive your Macintosh has. It will be obvious if you have an original 400K drive by the red light inside the drive. Like we saw, these first drives were notoriously loud and slow compared to the later 800K drives. But these machines are silent otherwise. It's very strange not to hear a fan. They do get a little warm over the analog board side. Hey, let's see if Joe's external floppy drive will work. Hey, it does. And it's even louder than the internal drive. An example of bringing a 400K disk from the website to the 512K Mac will be shown in a separate video for those interested. So, now I've got Scott Adams' 12 classic adventures on a 400K disk. Each game is just 13K. Incredible. Let's try Savage Island, obviously a favorite of mine. They tried to take advantage of the Macintosh user interface with directional buttons. Very good. And was ported to the Mac by Star System Software. Was this logo designed by an 80s male teenager by chance? This is a more innovative use of the user interface than Infocom offered at the time. Time elapsed, that's new. My contribution to Macintosh Garden was preserving the last known Macintosh copy of MasterType by Scarborough Systems. You're welcome. So, I have to type the words to get a wizard to shoot down the enemies before they collide with my spaceship. I don't really understand the plot here, but knowing touch typing would be a huge advantage, I admit. At least I took some of those bastards to hell with me. Yeah. The Macintosh Plus with a full megabyte of RAM was released January 1986, finally surpassing the 512K. Since Joe's Mac came with the Mac Plus floppy manual, he must have done the Macintosh Plus internal disk drive upgrade. At $300, it included an 800K double-sided disk drive, which it has, replaced the original 64K ROM with a 128K Mac Plus ROM. This also required an upgrade to System 3. System 3 with the Mac Plus ROM traded the Macintosh flat filing system known as MFS for the hierarchical filing system HFS. This change was pretty much required as external hard drives were starting to appear. You could also now boot from a hard disk instead of a floppy disk, and they added this Zoom box to the window. If you did not do the disk drive upgrade, System 4.1 would be the maximum OS a stock 512 could run. System 4 featured a new GetInfo box, more compact and readable than the clunky old GetInfo box used in System 1 through 3. The garbage can now bulged when it contained items. That's funny. It also added Restart, and when you shut down, it went to a shutdown screen instead of a blinking question mark. System 4 was released with the Mac SE and the Macintosh 2. It was built for those machines, including the addition of color capability for the Mac 2. System 4.2 featured such a huge improvement in the Finder that they marketed it as System Software 5. This made it easier to justify charging $49 for it. The big change was the Multi-Finder system extension. When activated, it would allow you to run more than one app at a time. At the same time, Mini Finder disappeared. Okay, so see, you just press the icon in the upper corner and you can cycle through the apps. Multi-Finder wasn't such a big advantage to the 512K because you probably didn't have enough memory to run more than one application. If you choose About the Finder, you see the addition of memory management information with bar graphs. The previous Finder info was not so impressive. System 6 was the first system that officially allowed you to choose your own system alert sound. With the Macintosh family growing ever larger, System 6 had to deal with the differences in the hardware and various printers. There would be multiple releases: 6.02, 6.03, 6.04, 6.05, 6.07, 6.08, and the Macintosh 512K faded into the background.
The end.
I'm sick of all these spiders around here.